Hello everybody, it's me, Saber Maxwell, coming at you with another horror game. This one being Carved by Grief, which is another visual novel game. This is apparently a way for the developer to process some massive trauma that they went through. And this is about their own grief and trauma. Going to be a short narrative experience designed to instill unease through a cosmic horror story based on real events. And it was built within 52 hours by a solo developer, or Jacksepticeye's game jam that he's doing this year. Pretty cool stuff. Let's check it out, shall we? This is a work of fiction, but it's loosely spun on real events. Okay, I got it. Nailed it. I'd been running for days without pause. I sat in the old house, the glow of the TV the only light left, half listening to the news and half ignoring the storm outside. They said it was the edge of a hurricane crawling north from the Gulf. Seasonal. Nothing unusual. I told myself I liked the rain. It was calming, like the white noise apps I used to fall asleep. This storm didn't sit right with me. Nothing on the radar looked strange, but the ground had been soaked for weeks. I couldn't stop thinking about the rivers swelling higher. I lived in the Appalachian Mountains, close enough to the French Broad to know how easily the water could rise. I'd weathered floods before, and I kept hoping this one would pass the same way. The steady drone of rain and television static was almost enough to lull me to sleep when the house suddenly sighed and the power cut out. The sudden silence was almost louder than the storm. The hum of the TV, the steady drone of appliances, all gone in an instant. Only the rain and wind pressed at the walls. I grabbed a flashlight and made my way to the back of the house. Oh boy. The beam shook with my hand as I opened the fuse box through the breakers, though the breakers all looked fine. Nothing tripped, nothing out of place. I grumbled. It was a storm. It must have knocked out the local grid. Probably a downed tree. On my way back, the house shuddered. A heavy crack split the roar of the storm, then glass burst inward as a branch punched through the back window. Shards clattered across the floor, rain blasting inside like the storm had found its way in. I froze, heart pounding from the crash. Rain was already pouring across the kitchen floor. Yeah. The broken window gaped like a wound, glass scattered everywhere. I cursed under my breath. Shit. This wasn't the time for repairs, but if I didn't cover it soon, the whole house would flood. I stood there for a moment, weighing my options. There was a tarp in the shed out back. I could rush into the storm to grab it, or find something inside and make do. Oh. Stay inside and find something else. I decided against stepping out into the storm. It sounds pretty bad out there. The thought of fumbling with a tarp in that chaos wasn't worth the risk. I gathered what I could from around the house, cardboard boxes, towels, even a blanket from the couch, and duct taped them against the shattered frame. Struggling to read, I'm sorry. Rain still leaked through some, but at least it kept the worst of it outside. Well, it's dark as hell in here. I decided to head back to the living room and try to wait it out until the power came back. I wouldn't be able to sleep comfortably without a fan, at least. I sat alone in the dark, listening. The house creaked and shuddered around me, every gust of wind rattling its bones. The walls felt thinner than they ever had before. Time slipped by strangely. 10 minutes, maybe an hour, I couldn't tell. I kept checking my phone for something to do, though service had cut out with the power. I get louder out there? The signal here was terrible. I usually relied on Wi-Fi at home. The screen was usually comforting, but now I just felt alone, isolated. Every so often I thought I heard something beyond the storm. A voice. A cry. The way the mountains carry sound, it could have been miles away, or right outside the window. I clutched blanket tighter and told myself it was just the wind. After a while, I started pacing the room, trying to pass the time and not think too hard about what was happening. The air grew damp and heavy. The floorboards were cold against my bare feet, colder than they should have been. I realized water was seeping in under the door. It started as a trickle. By the time I stuffed another towel against the frame, the trickle had become a stream. I backed into the kitchen as the house shuddered. Something slammed against the foundation, a dull blow that rattled dishes in the cabinets. The roar outside changed. It wasn't just rain anymore. It was the river. The house tore free, walls splintering, floors tilting under me as black water surged in. I had no time to scream before it swept me away. Oh, that was the first ending. Swept away. In the cold, wet darkness, I realized death is not mercy, nor is it punishment. Death is an opportunity. Mine was to surrender to the flood, the weight of the river washing away walls, breath, and memory until nothing of me remained. Okay then. Probably should have saved. There's 4 endings, huh? Okay. We'll go through the storm. Okay. Hang on. The rain hit me like a wall the moment I opened the door. It stung against my skin, cold needles driven sideways by the wind. I pulled the hood of my jacket tight and pushed into the yard. The shed was only a few yards away, but each step felt longer, the ground turning soft beneath my boots. Also, let me quick save. Did that save? I assume it saved. The flashlight beam jittered across the trees, catching the shed as it shuddered under the storm. The roof was still holding, though branches littered the ground around it like fallen bones. The rest of the door open, the hinges screaming against the wind. Inside, the smell of wet wood and rust. The tarp was there, balled up in the corner where I left it last season. I grabbed it, touching it under one arm as I forced the door closed again. Running back towards the house, I couldn't shake the feeling the storm was heavier than before. Not just louder, but closer, pressing in from all sides. Another crack of timber rolled through the hills, and for a second I thought I heard something else woven into it. Something that almost sounded like a voice. I froze in place, listening to determine what I was hearing. The mountains were old, and there was no shortage of folklore about strange sounds. I didn't buy into those, but something about this felt different. Maybe it was just the stress of the storm weighing on my mind. I tossed away the broken bench and started hastily stapling the tarp to the side of the house over the broken window. I heard it again, a shrill, eerie noise. I turned towards the woods, knowing the river was back there. I wondered for a moment if I should investigate. I should have saved again. Fix the window and get inside. I shook the thought away. I needed to keep myself safe. I needed to cover the window. I managed to fix the tarp over the whole window, and I hoped the staples would be enough to hold. The rain still seeped in a little, but it would keep most of it out for now. I decided to head back to the living room and try to wait it out until the power came back. I'd be able to sleep comfortably without a fan at least. Is this going to be the same ending? Kitchen shuttered. Can't tell. Kept checking my phone. The signal was terrible. We're outside the window. Wow. I've been heavy. I realized what I was sleeping under the door. It's the same ending. Okay. What's there? Oh, something that is felt different. Attached by the broken bench. Investigate. Someone might need help. I hesitated, staple gun in hand. The sound rose... safe? The sound rose again, high, drawn out, not quite human, close enough to twist my stomach. I don't like that. The rain hammered down, dripping cold through my sleeves. I told myself it was nothing, just an animal, wind in the hollows, an echo off the ridges. But the longer I listened, the less sure I was. It didn't fade like an animal call. It lingered, like it was waiting for me to answer. I turned back towards the house, tarp flapping against a broken window. It would hold for now. The noise carried again from the woods, sharper this time, rising over the storm. The river was back there, swollen and raging. If someone had been caught in it, if that really was a scream, time mattered. I swallowed hard and stepped onto the tree line, flashlight beams shaking against the thrashing branches. The woods closed around me, the storm muffled by their weight, and the sound pulled me deeper in. The beam of my flashlight cut through the rain in jittering arcs. That sounded like a scream. Branches snapped overhead, crashing to the ground in wet bursts. The deeper I went, the more destruction I saw. Trunks tore from the earth, roots jutting into the air like broken teeth. At first it seemed random, the way storms always leave wreckage scattered. But then I noticed a pattern. Every tree leaned the same way. Not towards the wind, but with it, like something enormous had brushed past and shoved them down in one sweep. A quick save again. The air smelled of split wood and wet soil. Each breath felt heavier, as though the storm itself was pressing down on my chest. And still, beneath it all, I could hear the river. Not just rushing, but roaring, louder than I'd ever heard it in these hills. But the trees thinned and the roar grew deafening. I broke through the last of the brush and stood frozen at the river's edge. Only it wasn't the river I remembered. The banks were torn wide, gouged open as if the earth itself had been ripped apart. The water surged straight and violent, shoving everything in its path forward. Bridges, fences, whole trees. All of it carried downstream in a single relentless line. My light caught on the trunks along the bank. Everyone bent the same direction, dipping under the flood, voiced down as though something massive had passed through and forced them down. Then came the cry. It rose from the torrent, sharp and desperate, nearly human, but not quite. It carried over the storm, striking at my senses. I felt my stomach turn. Someone could be out there, or it could be something else entirely. I inched closer, boots sinking into the mud. The ground felt too soft, water churning just below the surface. I swallowed. I could get closer, tried to find where the sound was coming from, but one misstep and the river would take me. And quick save? There's also a nagging feeling there's something more, something deeper in the woods. I feel like turning noise is going to get me ending one again, but we'll do it. I hesitated at the edge, the roar of the river drowning every thought. The cry rose again, twisting into something almost human, almost pleading. I tightened my grip on the flashlight. If I took one more step, the mud would give way. I could feel it shifting under me, ready to pull me under. I forced myself back, heart pounding, boots sliding as I scrambled for firmer ground. A chunk of riverbank collapsed where I'd been standing, washing into the flood. The cry was lost in the torrent, or maybe it was still there, echoing deeper in the woods. I couldn't tell anymore. The nagging pull tugged at me again, drawing me away from the water, deep into the forest towards whatever waited in the dark. I stood at the tree line, eyeing the deeper section of woods stretching up before me. The screen around me, the world around me felt strange, charged with an unfamiliar feeling. I heard the riverbank tear behind me as more ground gave way to the raging river. I walked forward, unease rising inside me as something urged me to continue. Enter the deep woods. That sounds like a bad idea, but let's do it. The trees leaned so hard they seemed ready to topple. Every trunk bowed in the same direction, as though brushed by a single vast hand. The mud pulled at my boots, each step heavier than the last. Oh god. Go north? Roots jutted up through the mud like bones. I tripped, steadied myself, and looked back. My footsteps were already gone, swallowed by the water. The storm's roar circled me, never closer and never farther. West, maybe? One faltered. In the hush, my own breath sounded ragged, unnatural. When the thin wail rose, carried on a stillness and slipped away like it had never been. North again. Mud sloped into a shallow basin, water pooling around my ankles. When I turned the light down, the reflection showed only darkness. No lights, no sky, just black water staring back. Branches snapped away in the distance like gunshots. I spun, light flashing around leaning trunks, but nothing stood there. Only the bawling of the forest, as though it mourned. Sad. The slope angled down and then up again, but nothing changed. The same roots, the same twisted trunks. As if the forest reset itself behind every step. South again? Lightning flash and a heartbeat. Or a heartbeat, the forest looked skeletal. Branches arched overhead like ribs, all bent the same way. The storm pressed down and the woods pressed back. The beam of my light caught gouges in the bark. Too wide for claw marks. Too neat for any tool I knew. For a moment the rain seemed to fall sideways. It hissed through the branches, but the trees did not sway. Somewhere ahead the woods opened into darkness. The ground refused to give. The forest thinned without warning. The close press of branches trunks gave way to a jagged scar that cut straight ahead, dragging up a slope slick with mud. I followed it, boots slipping on the incline, breath loud in the hush. Roots jutted from the ground like broken bones, guiding me forward whether I wanted to go or not. The storm dimmed as I climbed, not gone, never gone, but pulled back, as though the hills themselves were holding their breath. Only the rasp of my boots and the quick hammer of my heart filled the silence. Hold on, I need to charge my... Okay, I'm back. At the top, the trees ended all at once. I followed the gouged path of my eyes, a trail of destruction through the woods. The scar continued forward, gouged in a bare stone, running straight into open air. I staggered to a halt. Beyond me was nothing, only darkness. The earth sheared away into a cliff that overlooked the ridge of the woods I wasn't familiar with. The rain suddenly stopped. No, not stopped. Frozen in place. Drops hung in the air like glass beads, suspended around me, waiting. The sky glowed brighter than it should have, but a strange pulsing haze clung in the air. My lungs tightened. I could hardly breathe. My chest locked as though something pressed down on me. I stood trapped, unable to move, as silence devoured everything. I hung frozen with the world for a moment. It was almost peaceful. A sound rose from all around. At first it was low, a tremor in the stone beneath my feet. And it swelled, rolling through the frozen air until it filled my chest like a second heartbeat. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't wind. It was a cry, vast, hollow, and full of grief. So heavy it bent the silence around it, so wide it seemed to come from every direction at once. Beneath that cry came the groaning drag of something impossibly large, moving through the mountains. The earth shivered with each pull, the trees below bowing deeper in its wake. My eyes watered, my body straining against the weight of it. Every part of me wanted to run, to turn and throw myself back into the woods. And yet another part was pinned, held fast, compelled to stay and witness. Get the fuck out of here. I tore myself free of the silence and ran. The frozen rain shattered around me, drops streaking back into motion as the storm roared to life. I plunged into the trees, branches lashing my face, mud pulling in my boots. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The woods closed in tighter with every step. I searched for the scar, for the river, for anything familiar, but the paths folded over themselves. Every direction looked the same. I stumbled through the roots and shadows until I lost track of time. Minutes, hours, maybe days. Each step was heavier than the last, but I could never stop. There was always another cry in the distance, always another glimpse of light that led me nowhere. The storm never ended. The trees never ended. And slowly I realized that neither would I. I was no longer running towards home or away from the cliff. I was just wandering, getting deeper into the woods until even the memory of who I was slipped away. Ending 3 of 4, The Lost. That is not mercy nor punishment. It is opportunity. Mine was to drift unmoored, the world stretching on without me until I was only the echo of a traveler who never stopped. Okay. So that's 2 endings. Oh. Alright, I'm just gonna skip ahead to where I was, I think. Stand and watch this time. I stayed where I was, rooted in place. Every part of me screamed to run, but I couldn't turn away. Cry rose again, shaking the stone beneath my feet. It was grief, fast and unending, carrying through the air like thunder. It was different than the storm. It filled me with an intense sadness, echoing its own as the sound tore through me. It was lament. It was tragedy. I sat frozen for another moment. Then lightning tore the sky open. The rain returned. For an instant there was nothing, just a stretch of sky above mountains I had never seen before. Then, as if daring me to observe it, I saw something. A silhouette stretched across the horizon, too large to comprehend. Ooh, that's big. Its limbs dragged through the earth, tearing scars straight into the mountains. Behind it something even greater was pulled to the dark, a burden beyond my comprehension. It stood taller than the trees, taller than the peaks themselves. It stretched impossibly into the dark sky. I watched in horror as it released what it had been dragging, the shape bending and blending into the mountain range like it had always been there. And then, it looked at me. Oh. I trembled, dropping to my knees in terror. Something gazed deep into me, piercing into my mind, knowing all that I was, all I ever would be. Ooh. The pressure ached in my skull, foreign and unbearable. Just as I thought I would burst beneath its attention, it looked away. It dismissed me as insignificant, returning to its grave purpose and its wailing cries. I sobbed with the creature, my body hollowed by a queasy emptiness as the rain washed over me. The edges of myself seemed to sag, slackened around the absence it had left behind. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them, the creature was gone. The man stood silent, scarred and unknowable. A cry tore from my throat. Grief, rage, and futility mingled into one. It didn't sound like me. It didn't sound human. It hurt. I waited a few moments, and then I stood up. I turned and headed back the way I came, hoping it would lead me away from this madness. Hoping it would lead me home. I stumbled through the woods, half blind, the storm tearing at me from all sides. The memory of what I had seen clung like a fever. Something was still inside me, echoing, bending my thoughts out of shape. Every shadow looked wrong. Every tree leaned over toward me. I told myself, home. Just make it home. If I could just reach the house, I could lock the door, hide, and breathe. Home meant safety. Home meant hope. I pushed harder, crashing through the undergrowth, my lungs raw with rage and grief. My head swam, nothing felt like it should. The distance beneath my steps seemed to stretch and pull to absurd lengths as I walked. I felt detached from the world around me in one breath, and painfully bound to it in the next. I pushed forward still, trying to make sense of the path as I ran. Eventually the landscape began to look familiar. I recognized a small path through a few old trees that were still standing. It wasn't much further, I told myself, picking up my pace. Just beyond this next hill, I would see the large tree at my property line, and then my yard, and finally home. When the trees broke at last, I froze, and then collapsed to my knees. There was nothing. The ground where my home had been was gouged out, ripped into the scar that ran through the hills. No roof, no walls, no shelter. Only mud, only ruin. My fingers clawed at the earth as if I could pull it back, drag it back into shape, prove that something had been here before the storm. The storm had erased it all, as surely as it tried to erase me. I wanted to scream, but all that emerged was a fragile, simpering, whimpering sob. Eventually the storm began to subside. I sat, still sobbing in the cold and dark silence. What remained was worse than the noise, the emptiness, the ache, the crawling madness of memory. I had survived. The survival was no triumph. It was loss. It was grief without end. And in the dark, I knew I would have to keep going. I would have to bear the weight of my own survival. When morning came, it would not bring warmth. It would only illuminate the ruin and the voices of those left alive to mourn what the storm had taken. 4 of 4, The Witness. This is not mercy nor punishment. It is opportunity. I missed mine, and now I bear the weight of reality. The memory of what was seen, the burden of my crumbling sanity. Much like the path worn through the hills, a wound rends my mind. A scar that was carved by grief. Game by Morgan Logan? Made for the Jacksepticeye Game Jam. What about the tree story? I assume it has something to do with the disaster that happened in the Appalachian Mountains not long ago. On September 27, 2024, my home city of Asheville, along with most of western North Carolina, was hit by Hurricane Helen. We'd been experiencing heavier than usual rains for a while before the storm, and when it reached us, we were overrun with devastating floods. Thousands of people lost their homes, portions of cities were wiped off the map entirely, as our entire region underwent some of the worst flood levels in our history. In the days following the storm, we were cut off from the outside world. No power, no cell service, adrift in the world for weeks. It was terrifying to live through. As each day, people struggled to find supplies and learned more about how badly the effects of the storm had been. Many lives were lost, and thousands were changed drastically as we suddenly found our homes in ruins. My family was lucky enough to avoid most of the damage, though we were stuck without power for what felt like ages. Even today, a year later, our cities have not returned to normal. There are still places where you can see the damage left in the wake of the storm. Our community came together and tried to survive after it passed. Food drives, supply stations, gatherings, and more popped up across the state to help. But as the years gone by, and I tried to return to life as usual, I find myself stricken with grief and guilt. The story was written to help myself process the trauma of the event itself, the weight of survivor's guilt I have felt after. I wonder if I should make this, fearing people may see it as exploitation or mockery of the tragedy, but it is not my intent by any means. I don't see it that way either. I wanted to work through my own feelings and hopefully create something that could possibly help others. I remember looking at the path along the river, the wake of destruction from where the terribly high water had been, and welling with emotion. I remember thinking it looked like something impossibly huge had passed through, rending the earth as it went. That feeling is what inspired this cosmic horror tale laced with subtle references to our region's folklore. I hope those of you that played this get something beneficial out of it. I think more than anything, it is important that we share stories, happy, scary, or otherwise. Love those around you. Life is precious. Thanks for playing. And thank you for telling your story. It really is tragic what happened with those floods. Like, a lot of people lost everything to that disaster. And my heart goes out to those people because I can't even possibly begin to imagine what that must be like. The only thing I could possibly compare it to is as if my home got wiped out by a tornado, but that never actually happened to me. And I don't mean like my heart goes out to these people. And I hope sincerely that things do return to normal. And maybe not quite the way they used to be, but something close to it, I would hope. And that was definitely different for a scary video. Like say another visual novel game, but that was very good. I really like that. The writing was very compelling. And usually when there's in my experience anyway, really compelling writing like that usually comes from personal experience of the author. You know, something that they're using grief in some way to tell a story. And this was really good. I think not only told the perspective of somebody who went through that tragedy, that natural disaster, but put an interesting little respectful spin on it from things that they saw during that, you know, because of that storm. I very much so like that. And with all that said, I hope this person like does make something more. I think they have a talent for writing. I do. They know how to tell a story. And for you all, the game will be in the description. And thank you for watching. And so I want to say this, it's always appreciated. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. This is my normal type of content. Not always visual novel stuff, but I do try to stick to horror games, though I will eventually be doing other types of content after October. Other games, just maybe not scary games. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next Spooktober video. Look forward to it, because I'll now hope to see you there. Okay. Bye bye.